Maraming salamat, Dr. Frago Marasigan, for that very interesting lecture on how Palo and Balandiga and James improvise during and after Yolanda hit their area. So to give comments and reactions to Professor Frago Marasigan's presentation, we have 3 reactors. First is Dr. Kristoffer Berse. He is Assistant Professor at the University of the Philippines, National College of Public Administration and Governance. He has a multidisciplinary background in urban engineering. He took his PhD at the University of Tokyo, Environmental Studies at the University of Tokyo, and Public Administration here in UP. He teaches mostly public policy courses at both undergraduate and graduate levels, including a special course on disaster and climate change. Outside of teaching and research, he serves as a consultant for government, civil society, and international development organizations in areas broadly crisscrossing the intersections of sustainable urban development, public policy, and disaster risk governance. He also writes for Reactor as one of its top leaders in the area of disaster risk governance and climate change adaptation. Our second reactor for this afternoon's presentation is Dr. Fuad Betdimeran. He is the founding member and currently the chairman of the board of the Earthquakes and Medicities Initiative, a not-for-profit international scientific organization based in the Philippines. He directed and completed several innovative urban VRR projects, including the risk-sensitive redevelopment of Barangay Rizal, Makati, Philippines, and the risk-sensitive land use plan in Kathmandu, Nepal, and also the development of the local VRRMPs for Metro Manila, Kathmandu, Amman, Pasig City, Quezon City, Mumbai, and Dhaka. He served in the faculty of Stanford University for 13 years as visiting professor at the Center for Urban Safety and Security in Japan, in the Karlsruhe Institute of Technology in Germany. He maintains an active earthquake engineering consulting practice in California, where he is a registered professional engineer. And last but not least, our reactor is Dr. Paul Barsinal. He is currently the department head of the Disaster Risk Reduction and Management Office of Marikina City. He is also a medical practitioner and consultant and teaches tertiary education at the Roosevelt College System in Cayuta, Rizal. Dr. Barsinal has comprehensive medical experience in curative, preventive, and promotive aspect of medicine, dynamic experiences in volunteer organization as volunteer and vice chairman of Red Cross Marikina branch. He is an active Rotarian of the Rotary Club of Marikina, former president of Marikina Valley Medical Society, and administrative head of the Marikina City Disaster Volunteer Group. Ladies and gentlemen, our 3 reactors for this afternoon's lecture.
Maraming salamat, Jay. Thank you very much, Dr. Frago Marasigan, for the very enlightening and very relevant for sharing with us your research findings. This is actually very good for us now because, as you know, we are looking at the Sunset Review next year. So the findings of the study would be useful not only for the purposes of academic discussion, but also even for policymakers and they are practitioners, some of whom are here, and we can who would be who are involved in the process of Sunset Review. So let me just say that let me start with the idea that the frame of improvisation is actually a very useful tool for understanding how our local leaders deal with disasters. Because we know that LGUs are the first line of defense when it comes to handling emergencies or disasters before, during, and after. It's not the national police, it's not the international donor community, it's not the national military, it's not even the national government. So the main responsibility for that falls squarely on the shoulders of the LGUs, especially the mayor. Now, I've talked to some of the mayors from Leyte on a number of occasions after Yolanda struck. First, when one municipality approached the UB system to ask for technical assistance in early recovery. And then second, when in the leadership workshop, and also a kind of a pledging conference, small conference, organized by Tabang Visayas and Kayanan movement. And lastly, just recently this August, to help the ASEAN community drum up support for continuing assistance to the underserved municipalities in the so-called Yolanda corridor. Now, what I learned from them is this, that many of them, when Yolanda struck, basically the sheer immensity or monstrosity of the disaster overwhelmed their capacity to handle the event. And because of that, it is, as we have seen in the examples in Palo and Panamiga, they had to resort to out-of-the-box solutions and even sometimes desperate actions. That's why, for instance, we have heard how a certain mayor left his hometown, had to leave his hometown and ride a motorcycle for hours, just to seek external help, call for help. And also we have heard how a mayor reportedly, heroically, took matters into his hand by handling the backhoe by himself, thus to clear the debris of the streets. And the same mayor, of course, later on would cry on national TV over the abandonment of so-called abandonment of the national government, as well as lament at how the scientific community has failed in providing timely and accurate information with respect to Yolanda. And then there's another mayor also whose big problem came 4 days later in the form of a rumor that the National People's, the NPA, is taking over his hometown. So sabi niya, nung nakausap ko siya, yun daw yung mas masakit na problema because the people would not want to go back to their homes because of this widespread rumors na meron ng mga NPA sa lugar. Okay? So that's one. And so what happened was, the stories are endless and they are endlessly entertaining to the point that we would be good to come up with a book, a coffee table book about it. So I agree with the notion of improvisations as symptomatic of a lack of preparedness for the part of the LGUs. For instance, a good contingency or even business continuity plan would have avoided, would have helped Palo and Panamiga avoid the problems they had when it comes to accessing their funds or even in the arrangements with the private sector. Also, and this problem, of course, is not just unique to these space areas. In a scoping study that I conducted for Asia Foundation, what we found out is that the preparedness, local preparedness, it remains a big issue 5 years into the implementation of the law. And in fact, post-Yolanda, the DILG, for instance, Region 7, conducted an assessment. They ran a preparedness scorecard, assessment scorecard post-Yolanda, and they found out that out of the 88 LGUs in Central Visayas, not one passed the test. So it's indicative of how bad the situation is, even after Yolanda. So now they're doing something about it, of course. Now, however, preparedness can only take us so much. I also acknowledge that because, in fact, this is also true for many of the LGUs in the Yolanda corridor, including Tacloban City, for instance. In fact, as we know, Tacloban City, that they have done massive evacuation, right? As in the case of Palo also, they have done massive evacuations, and in fact, there are already plans for them between the mayor and the national government to meet again in the morning of November 8 to have a tactical coordination meeting. But of course, that did not materialize because they scheduled it at 8 o'clock, but the typhoon came after the city as early as 4 a.m. So in that case, the point is that extraordinary events, or SWAN events, as we would say in public policy, black swan events, those kind of events, situations like that, will always demand extraordinary measures also. And that would, improvisations that may not be adequately covered or codified into a plan or a contingency or response plans. Now, given this reality, I only have 2 minutes. I'd like to jump into the notion of, this brings me to the notion of crisis leadership. Because this, or the more fancy term, the adaptive governance. Because this is one of the areas where we're currently lacking. Most of our efforts in capacity building are targeted at building the 3 C's, the operational, strategic, and so on capacities of our technical staff, of the DRM practitioners, or boots on the ground. But we seem to have forgotten, for instance, the role of the leadership, of the local leaders. And this has been exposed quite badly in the case of Yolanda, not just at local level, but also at the national level. And also, I'm thinking that for purposes, from the academy, maybe this is something where we could come into, especially since UP is the only university in the country with a public service mandate. So maybe this is something that, because right now there's no solid leadership, there's no solid training program that focuses on how, on crisis leadership. That has been institutionalized. We don't have that yet. And also, now obviously there are many others, like for example the issue about but of course leadership is only one aspect of it. It doesn't mean diminishing the importance also of, let's say, the local DRRM offices and the council. Because right now what we have, tama po yung sinabi niyo kanina, it's not just in Palo and in Balamiga, but also in many other areas. Most of these the offices are just doing ministerial work. And it's partly because, in fact, yung mga tao na nandyan are mostly seconded from their other main responsibilities. For instance, the head of the DRRM office would be the chief of police, it could be the representative from the planning office, and so on. So there's really not, they're not really the full-time personnel specific for that office. And there are reasons for that. One is, in many cases, in some cases, not many, in some cases it's because of the lack of funds, for especially the poor LGUs. But for LGUs that can fund this post, there are 4 minimum staff requirements. The problem has something to do also with the provisions in RA 7160 or the local government code, because apparently the first to third class municipalities are not allowed to go beyond allocating 45% of their overall budget for personal services. So pag nagdagdag pa sila, it's beyond 45%. But of course, the DILG, CSC, and so on recently have come up with a joint memorandum waiving that particular requirement, but only for the first year. Then after the first year, then it's only a problem. The same case for 4 to 6 class municipalities, and we just lowered it to 55%. So again, before I would just like to say that the current limitations of the law and also the extraordinary measures demanded from extraordinary events like Yolanda. One, the use of these so-called improvisations. I look at them as innovations as we go along. And however, we cannot just keep on improvising thinking down. We have to, we can do more. We can address certain gaps. For me, it's as important yung crisis leadership, adaptive governance, the institutional strengthening of the DRRMOs, and there are many other issues that probably many other co-reactors will point out, will touch upon. And the thing is, at least the sunset review next year will provide us a golden opportunity to take into account these innovative practices, so that we'll have a better and more improved system. I think that's all. Thank you very much. Magandang hapon.